When we started the tractate of Nazir, one of the things that we mentioned was that in tone, it is incredibly close to the tractate of Nedarim, the tractate of vows. And in fact, the first Mishnayot of Nedarim and Nazir are almost identical. And we learned that, of course, the role of Nazir, the function of the role of being a Nazir can only be taken on via a vow, via an oath. So there are incredibly strong connections between Nazirut and vows. And as we jump into the second chapter of the Mishnah, where the Mishnah is going to play around a little bit with the interrelationships between vows and Nazirut, and sort of, let's say, the crossovers between those two. And the Mishnah begins with something which doesn't really make sense. Hareni Nazir minha grogrot uminha dvela. Behold, I'm a Nazir from dried figs and pressed figs. Why doesn't it make sense? Because if you're a Nazir, you can eat both dried figs and pressed figs. And we've said always that there are only three things that Nazirim have to watch out for. They're dead bodies, hair cutting, and alcohol or grapes. So dried figs and pressed figs are perfectly permitted. And this doesn't make sense. And Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are going to take radically different views because they have different views about what we do when someone says something that doesn't make sense. Beit Shammai omrim Nazir. Beit Shammai say he's a Nazir. In other words, Beit Shammai are going to interpret each one of his statements as if it makes sense by itself. So, Hareini Nazir, I am a Nazir. Beit Shammai say, okay, at that point, he's a Nazir. And when he talks about dried figs and pressed figs, seems like he's also staying away from dried figs and pressed figs. Or maybe he's retracting. But you can't retract. After declaring you're a Nazir, you can't retract. So he's a Nazir. Now, Beit Hillel have a different view. Beit Hillel take the view that we look at the entirety of his statement. Beit Hillel omrim eino Nazir. Beit Hillel say he's not a Nazir. That if we look at the entirety of his statement, he began by saying he's a Nazir, but he then went on to talk about something that makes no sense at all. He talks about dried figs and pressed figs. That's not an oath of Nazirut. That might be an oath to stay away from dried figs and pressed figs. You see, now here we got the relationship with Nedarim, with oaths. It might be an oath, but it's not Nazirut. And Rabbi Yehuda is going to come somewhere in the middle. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, af shamru ve'et shamai lo amru ela v'omer harei hu alai korban. Harei hu alai korban. It is like a sacrifice to me. That's the language of vows. Rabbi Yehuda says, when Beit Shammai said this, they only really referring to someone who says, oh yeah, dried figs and pressed figs are like a sacrifice to me, i.e., I swear I'm not going to take dried figs and pressed figs. So when we use the word Nazir, we're just kind of using it figuratively, just like we're saying, oh yeah, it's like a sacrifice to me. I would never touch a dried fig and pressed fig. Now, in this case, by the way, we might think that Beit Shammai would agree with Beit Hillel that in principle he's not a Nazir. And let's just think about that one as we go forward. The second example, the Mishnah brings is even wackier. Amar, Amra parazo, Hareni Nazirai Momedet Ani. he said that this cow said, so he's quoting the cow now. Behold, I am a Nazirah if I stand up. This is the cow speaking now. The cow is going to be a Nazirah if it stands up, i.e., just as the man isn't going to eat dried figs or pressed figs, the cow seems to be taking a vow that it's not going to stand up. This is a cow that is maybe going to carry a load, and clearly this guy is trying to make it stand up. Clearly the driver is trying to make it stand up, and he's so frustrated with this cow. He says this cow has sworn not to stand up. But he seems, and this is the way, at least this is the way the commentators read it, he also seems to say, oh yeah, I will be a Nazir if I can't get it to, I'm going to be a Nazir unless I can get it to stand up. And similarly with the door, Hareni Nazira im omedet ani. Amar hadalet hazeh, hare ani Nazir im niftach ani. The door is saying, so now this is even wackier than the cow speaking. This is the door speaking. The door is speaking and saying, oh, I'm a Nazir if I open. Clearly he's trying to open this door. It's stuck. He can't get it open. But he seems to be implying an oath himself about his status. And along the same lines, Beit Shammai omrim Nazir. Beit Shammai say he's a Nazir. Beit Shammai say he's a Nazir. He seems to have implied he's taking an oath of Nazirut. This is assuming, by the way, the cow stands up and the door opens. Uvei Hillel omrim eino Nazir. Beit Hillel say he's not a Nazir. This is not an oath of Nazirut. And Rav Yehuda will come in to kind of reinterpret, just as in the first Mishnah. Amar Rav Yehuda af k'shamru Beit Shammai. Rav Yehuda said, look, when Beit Shammai said all this, lo amru Elimelech omer harei farazo korban im omedeti. Beit Shammai said, look, they're only really talking about someone, and again, we're talking about a figure of speech. This cow is like a sacrifice if it gets up, as if to say, it's absolutely amazing if this cow stands up. If it stands up, it's going to have the status of a korban, i.e., I'm not going to have any contact with it. What about if they, and both of these examples are examples where the speaker seems to be slightly confused. And the Mishnah morphs then into a situation where the speaker is not only confused, but he's drunk. Masgulo et hakos, they mixed a cup for him. Amar Hareini Nazir Mimenu. He said, I'm a Nazir from it, i.e., I'm not going to drink this cup. Again, we've got the crossover between oath and Nazirut. Does it mean, oh yeah, I couldn't possibly touch another cup of wine tonight? Or does it mean he's really swearing he's going to become a Nazir? And the Mishnah rules, Harei ze Nazir. And the Gemara says there's a missing piece in this Mishnah. Because if he was drunk, he would not be a Nazir. And the Mishnah brings an example, actually related to a woman. Remember we said when we began this tractate that the laws of Nazirut are gender neutral. They apply to men and to women. That once upon a time, a woman was drunk. And they mixed a cup for her. This must be an extra cup. And she said, behold, I'm a Nazirah from it, i.e., the plain sense is, I do not want any more wine. I've had enough wine. Please don't give me another cup of wine. So according to the first ruling in the Mishnah, we think that she is a Nazirah. But remember, we've said there seems to be a missing piece. This doesn't apply when you're drunk. And the sages are going to make this clear. Amru Chachamim, the sages ruled. Lo nit kavna zo ele belomar Harehu ale korban. The sages ruled that she only meant to say, oh yeah, it's like a sacrifice to me. I.e., she's using the language of oath. She's not using the language of Nazir or Nazirut. She's using the language of oath, and she's just saying, look, this cup is like a sacrifice to me. I swear I'm not going to drink this cup. I've had enough to drink. Don't tempt me with any more.